All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this Wednesday morning, beautiful morning, to talk about digital skills. My name is Marcus Keach. I'm the Director of Government Affairs here at the Grand Rapids Chamber, and I appreciate you taking time this morning to join us. One of the portfolios that I'm in charge of is our workforce development and education advocacy work here at the Chamber. And part of that work this year, we're focusing on digital skills. Some of you may have attended our Breakfast with Legislators this past January, where we heard from some panelists as well as the National Skills Coalition releasing a report on the digital divide. That was an announcement of a year-long series that we're doing here at the Grand Rapids Chamber focusing on digital skills. And this is the first of a handful of webinars that we will be doing on that topic. So we appreciate your time this morning. I'll turn it over to our sponsor in just a minute. But I just wanted to kind of put this bug out there and get you thinking about this early on the topic of digital skills. After we hear from some panelists, we're going to open the floor up for you all to have comments and questions. And I want you to build some of those around what's some of those digital gaps and digital barriers for skills that you're seeing when you're trying to recruit and hire your workforce. We hear from these great organizations we're about to hear from and the work that they're doing, but we want to make sure that we're listening to you as well. And if there's any adjustments to the process or skills that we're training on, you're the ones on the front line of really determining what is necessary for your workforce to be effective from day one. And so with that, I want to turn it over to our sponsor of our digital skills series, Jeff Snyder. He is the Senior Manager of External Affairs at Comcast here in Michigan. And Jeff, I want to give you a few minutes to talk to everybody.
Excellent. Thank you, Marcus. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. As Marcus said, my name is Jeff Snyder, and I have the honor of representing Comcast on today's webinar. As you'll hear more about in just a minute, there is a digital skills gap that many folks in our community are facing, and this gap points to a significant divide in Michigan's workforce readiness. And that divide is unfortunately pretty pervasive. The demand for digital skills goes across every industry and every occupation, including entry-level and frontline positions. And this group probably knows better than anyone that the economy across West Michigan depends on a trained and ready workforce. Employees need to be able to hit the ground running and continue to keep pace with technology to help your businesses thrive in an increasingly digital world. So how do we work to close this gap? For more than a decade, Comcast has invested in and worked closely with the state of Michigan and our community partners here in Grand Rapids to close the digital divide and make digital equity a reality. We recognize that creating digital equity and breaking barriers to internet adoption are critical to achieving universal broadband, and that the promotion of digital equity, including through access to devices, skills training, and inclusivity, is paramount to closing that gap. But we can't do it alone, and we wouldn't want to. We all benefit from a more inclusive and equitable digital landscape, and we all play a role in making digital equity a reality for current employees and future job seekers here in West Michigan. In fact, leaning in to address the digital skills gap can have a significant payoff. One of the statistics that came out of the National Skills Report found that public investments to close the digital skills gap can generate measurable economic payoff for both workers and business owners, and therefore the broader economy. For employers, providing workers with upskilling opportunities can save them $25,000 to $78,000 in turnover and retention costs per employee. And for workers, moving from a job that requires no digital skills to one that requires just one digital skill can yield a 23% increase in wages. So that's significant. We'll hear more about that in just a minute, but for now, I'd like to just close out by saying this: a gap in digital skills knowledge is fundamentally a digital equity issue. Access, education, inclusion, and affordability all play a role in making digital equity a reality for current employees and future job seekers in West Michigan. We're proud to be a partner in Michigan's digital equity journey and to continue to work with policymakers and community leaders to close the digital divide and ensure the success of Michigan's workforce today and tomorrow. Together, we can fuel the continued growth of the West Michigan workforce by working together to address gaps and accelerate workforce potential. And supporting digital skills education like today's webinar helps us do exactly that. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Jaron from the National Skills Coalition to talk a little bit more about the report. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Most of you know me from working here in Michigan, but if you don't, I'm Jaren Kalina. I work at National Skills under our Business Leaders United effort, which is ensuring that small and medium-sized businesses have their voice in advocacy, both at the state and federal level. And I'm based right outside of Grand Rapids in Middleville, Michigan, so not too far from most people here. Today I'm going to talk about the report that we did maybe last year with the Atlanta Federal Reserve, or the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta. And so if you want to go to the next slide. The biggest thing about that we see, and most of you know, is that we talk about broadband when we talk about digital equity. And broadband's important, devices are definitely important, but one thing that we sometimes forget is the importance of digital skills that are required to be able to access the internet, or even just be able to have devices and work the devices. So closing the digital divide requires all three of those things to be able to really look at digital equity as a whole. So if we go to the next slide, the importance of like understanding why all those three are really connected is that we learn from research that people with greater digital skills are more likely to take advantage of broadband opportunities like the Affordable Connectivity Program, which some of you may know is ending at the end of this month. So hopefully it does not end, but and there's a bipartisan effort to make sure it doesn't end, but that's like 23, I think, or 43 million people that are connected to that, just having affordable internet access. So if we care about people getting high-speed internet, we should also care about their skills. And so one of the things we decided to do is go right to the source and see what employers are telling us about the digital skills they need in their workforce. So unlike other digital skills reports that are more like thinking about what are the future projections for the workforce and what are we going to need for the digital skills of the future, we thought it would be more helpful to look at what do everyday job ads say right now. So our report is based on real help wanted ads from real employers about real jobs that they are really hiring for. So then on the next slide, you'll see that we looked at huge set of 43 million help wanted ads, including hundreds of thousands of jobs from Michigan in particular. And on the next slide, you'll see that our take-home finding is clear that 92% of all jobs require a digital or likely digital skill. And if we really go and unpack what those terms mean, a definitely digital skill is something like Excel or Python language. And whereas a likely digital skill is something like bookkeeping, where you could do it using a pen and paper ledger, but most people these days are using a software program like QuickBooks or Excel. And then on the next slide, you can see that Michigan's demand for digital skills compared to the national average. So Michigan's numbers are in the like tealish color, and the national data is in the gray. And so they're pretty comparable on where we stand. And even though it says 89%, you can imagine that most jobs have that more than that across the board, because you guys work with employers all of the time. So on the next slide, something that we see is that digital skills aren't just something that shows up in IT jobs or white collar jobs. Our study found every job across all industries like agriculture, construction, manufacturing, and more really have the need for these kinds of jobs. And so on the next slide, you'll see just like some kinds of jobs that we talked about. So in tandem with this effort, we were also interviewing businesses about their digital skills needs. And one of the things we found was that smartphone apps are increasingly common in construction industry. One company that we interviewed told us their frontline workers often use 3 to 5 different mobile apps on their smartphones every day. This is especially key for subcontractors who are working on far-flung building sites, and they have to be able to snap a picture on site and immediately use an app to submit a work change order for the general contractor. And then things like agriculture for the next one. I know you all see it in a lot of the agriculture industry that we have here, especially in West Michigan, and digital skills are needed for pretty much everything that they're working on now. And so these days, a John Deere tractor or maybe a combine harvester comes equipped with an onboard computer. So farm workers need to be able to use and troubleshoot these devices out in the field to guide fertilization, irrigation, and other crucial tasks. So the basic of this is that in the next few slides, you'll see some data, but it really will say that workers at every level, including entry-level positions, now require digital skills. So one of the things that we see is that if you look at like the red circle, this includes jobs that only require 0 to 2 years of experience. And right, you can see 95% are likely digital skills that they would be needed. And on the next slide, it also includes jobs that require a high school diploma or an associate's degree, which is circled here in that greenish color. And like Jeff said, our research found that jobs that require digital skills pay significantly more than those that do not. On the left, you'll see the medium hourly wage for jobs that don't require any digital skills. And on the right, you can see the higher medium wage for jobs that require even just one digital skill, definitely digital skill. And of course, as workers earn more money, they contribute more in tax revenue and help to drive local economic activity through increased consumption. And then on the next slide, you'll see that one of the things we also looked at is what was the difference between small and medium-sized companies by looking at the number of job postings they post. So small businesses are almost as likely as their larger counterparts to need workers with digital skills. The difference is that in big businesses, they can run their own in-house training programs, but small and medium-sized businesses depend on the public workforce system, community colleges, and other partners to train them to help them build a skilled pipeline of talent, which I think we are going to hear about with the rest of the folks on this call too. And then on the next one, our research also found that people need both foundational and industry specific skills. I'll go slower. We're going to show more details in this in a minute, but the big message here is that it's not enough to just give someone a basic Microsoft Office class. People really need opportunities to build specific skills for the industry or the occupation they work in. So zeroing in on what Michigan's demand for digital skills looks like. On the next slide, we're going to see oh, well, this is really just talking about that all Michigan businesses were talking about having a strong base of foundational digital skills, including, I believe, some of the skills that are on the next page. So things that you probably see in job ads right now, typing, scheduling, data entry, things like computer literacy and Microsoft Excel, all things that we would connect to digital skills. And if we looked at different industry, what kind of industry specific skills you need, a lot of our healthcare industries are going to need something like electronic medical records or ERP software or robotics or anything that is in the manufacturing industry too. We see a lot of digital skills associated with those positions. So all of that came through, and then one of the things that we wanted to do was kind of frame it into what we are doing as at the national level and at the state level on some of the data that's come through. And what we really wanted to do is support leaders across the country to use this information, as we have 2 different federal streams of dollars coming down to states, which both have been written by Michigan and I believe approved. At least the Digital Equity Act one has been approved at the national level, and there should be money coming down to the state. The Digital Equity Act money and the BEAD money are a plan for the state to roll out a roadmap for digital upskilling. In Michigan is one of 13 states that will have what are considered non-deployment dollars. So many states are using all of their broadband equity access and deployment dollars for all broadband access. And Michigan has been shown, and that could change probably in some of these federal mapping exercises that the state is going through, that once we finish with all of the broadband expansion, there will be money left over, or in tandem with the broadband expansion, there will be money left over for digital equity activities, which includes things like supporting a training of broadband and cybersecurity jobs, but it could include things like just baseline foundational digital skills too. And what we recommended to the state of Michigan, and I think is pretty clear in their plan, is that they should tap into workforce and education stakeholders who are already doing the work and have industry partnerships, so the money could easily funnel down into those places. And things are already happening and they're working really well in the state of Michigan. So why not embed those digital skills just in, and they probably are embedded in a lot of the programs that already exist. So just continuing to fund programs that are already doing good work. And lastly, one of the things that's most important, and we do have another report on this, is the intersection of racial equity and digital equity. So making sure that the covered populations that are called out in the Digital Equity Act are actually seeing those dollars. And covered populations cover a lot of different things, including seniors, adults in adult education, low income, reentry populations. There's a wide variety. Probably many of the people on this call are serving those populations. And so just making sure we're looking at census data and laying that over where those digital equity gaps are. And you could use some of the data that we already have in at NSC too. And so I will put the digital skill report in our into the chat so people can see it, but and I'll also put the racial equity one too, so you can see that as well. But I'm sure I can take questions later if people have additional questions.
Thank you, Jaren. And just, I know that there was a comment about slowing down. Just so you all know, we are recording this Zoom as well, and we will, once we do some back-end editing, we will make sure it gets out to all those in attendance, so you can review the slides and all that information again and again and again, to get all the information that you want until it is something that you're dreaming of. So with that being said, I'd like to now break it into some of our organizations that are actually on the front lines doing the work, helping train our workforce, and all the great work that they're doing. We have three great panelists to talk. We will take questions at the end of all three. So please hold them, think about some really great questions. Feel free to put them in the chat when we get to that point, or you can even click the raise your hand button, and then we'll get to you when we finish our panelists. But to start, I want to introduce Angie Barksdale. She's the Chief Operating Officer at West Michigan Works. I could probably say this about all of our panelists, that they're all members of our Workforce and Education Committee. As I said earlier, this is under that umbrella. So with that, Angie, I want to turn it over to you. Thank you for being here.
Great. Thank you, Marcus. Good morning, everyone. Hopefully you get to enjoy a little bit of the sunshine this morning before it sounds like it's going to turn nasty the next couple days. Welcome to Michigan. So just a little bit about West Michigan Works. I recognize lots of names on the webinar today, but I don't want to make assumptions that everyone knows who we are. West Michigan Works is the Workforce Development Board covering the 7-county region here in West Michigan. We administer numerous federal, state, and philanthropic workforce programs for job seekers as well as for our employers. We do that through 8 full service centers in those 7 counties. So there are actual physical locations where job seekers and employers can tap into these resources. And in those centers are numerous community partners who help provide services. Just to give scope a little bit, in 2023, we serviced just over 61,000 job seekers in West Michigan, either virtually or in person, and over 3,700 employers. So lot more work to do, but actually connecting with a lot of community members. So the work that we do in this space is, as Jaren mentioned, a lot of it is embedded in our day-to-day work. So some of the basic services that we offer in our service centers is career coaching. And that career coaching services works with job seekers wherever they're at, helping them identify their career path. And in doing that, identifying if there's needs for remedial services around digital education and knowing basic things like how to use a mouse on a computer. So some of us forget that it's not just advanced technologies, but it's also some of those very basic skills how to turn the computer on, how to type a resume. So career coaches help individuals one-on-one with that. We refer to numerous partners within our communities that may provide more direct or specific services, as well as connecting to different training. We also have career navigation. So in our 8 service centers, there is a computer lab that's open to the public, free of charge. Anyone can walk in, and we have dedicated staff who will assist somebody on working through that, whatever they're doing on the computer, focused on their career exploration, applying for jobs, putting the resume together. Aside from those basic services, we do have some dedicated workshops that we offer. We utilize programs like GCF Learn Free, which is a self-directed workshop-based program that helps individuals walk through a variety of different educational opportunities, if it's very basic or a little bit more advanced. We also offer staff-assisted lab times, so individuals can come in and use a computer lab to walk through those if they don't have access in their home, and we'll have staff available to walk them through and help them as needed. Another service that we offer is we utilize a system called North Star Digital Literacy, and this really connects much to what you heard Jaren talk about in her report. We started using this system back in 2015 when we launched our medical assistant registered apprenticeship program, and that is considered an entry-level healthcare position. However, at that time, we were hearing concerns from our community college partners as well as the employers that individuals coming into that program may not have the digital literacy skills to work things like an iPad or a laptop, which in the day of electronic medical records is highly important, along with the technical medical skills that the MA would be learning in their apprenticeship program. So this program provided an assessment, a pre-assessment through that process, so we could identify if there was remediation that needed to be provided before the client or the participant was suitable for that program. If not, then we assisted them getting connected with resources to help them on their career path. The other service that we offer is specifically for refugee and new Americans. We have a dedicated refugee navigator whose job is really to assist individuals in this population to connect with resources specific to their barriers. Most likely around ESL or English second language skills that connect with the digital literacy skills. So it's not just digital literacy, but also the language barrier. So we partner with numerous partners in our community: Samaritas, Office of Global Michigan, Bethany Christian Services, the Literacy Center, just to name a few, and helping those individuals connect with those services that are really tailored to that population. As employers, you may know, as we all know, we need to be able to tap into all varieties of talent pipelines. And that talent pipeline has additional barriers that we need to help support them to be suitable for employment. The other area that we do provide services in is our business solutions unit. So not only are we providing support for the job seeker, but on the employer end, our business solutions team can work with employers to connect with training programs that are available out in our communities, as well as tap into some of the federal and state dollars that may be available to support the funding of training for incumbent workers or new hires. Programs like Going Pro Talent Fund are used quite extensively to help employers upskill maybe some entry-level positions, but also incumbents in new technologies that they're deploying in their business. And this is an ever-changing environment, as we know, as technology continues to change. So helping employers connect to those resources so they can keep their workforce at the skill level that they need.
Thank you, Angie. And like I said earlier, we will get to questions at the end. I know that I wrote down a question, so we will get to that after our next 2 panelists. Next, we have Wendy Randall, Director for the Kent County Essential Needs Task Force. The Kent County Essential Needs Task Force, I know Wendy will go a little more in detail on this, has 6 different committees, one of which being digital inclusion. And when I think of digital inclusion, obviously we can talk about digital skills all day long, but if our residents throughout the county do not have access to the internet and they don't have the access to being literate in using technology, it's really difficult to train to have those digital skills. So with that, Wendy, thanks for being on, and we're going to hear what the task force is doing to address that digital inclusion.
Thanks, Marcus. And I want to thank the National Skills Coalition, Comcast, and of course the Grand Rapids Chamber for hosting this important conversation. I think it's really essential that we're looking at all the wide range of aspects of the digital equity system. And as Marcus mentioned, in our digital inclusion group, we've really kind of defined the system into some distinct category areas, not different than what the things that you've heard already this morning. So ENTF is a convening partner, so we don't provide direct service to the community. However, we incorporate those service providing organizations as well as representatives from local governments and representatives from businesses and representatives that are community organizers. We gather all of those individuals and organizations to have those vital conversations around the alignment and strategies necessary to shift systems so that our residents have equitable opportunities and equitable outcomes. So we're really looking at what is the collaborative approach? How can we be working together to align all the services, to align all the vision, you know, to have a shared vision for what the future looks like, and here specifically in the digital inclusion or digital equity area. So when we talk about digital inclusion or digital equity, we look at some specific key areas. So we're looking at connectivity, and we heard a little bit about connectivity earlier. We look at devices. We heard a little bit about devices earlier. We look at literacy, and literacy is important from both the consumption and the authorship area. So we're thinking about not only those basic skills, but also then being able to contribute to advanced technologies and contribute to the conversation from a problem-solving standpoint. We look, so literacy itself is kind of a specific area. And then we look at skills development as kind of the ongoing advancement of that. So what are the specific sector areas or the specific industries where those technology or digital skills need to be advanced? And then a really important factor is navigation. And I think Angie touched on this, and I'm sure others will talk about this as well. Being able to connect to the resources that are appropriate for the needs that that individual has or the needs that the employer has is a really vital piece here. And what we found even as recent as a year ago is some of the common places that people connect with resources didn't have understanding or even the inventory of the span of resources that are actually available in our community. So if you think about people who are kind of in that historic poverty, you know, who are experiencing crisis after crisis, one of the places that they go to first is 211 to get that information and referral. And even within our Michigan 211 system, there were very few organizations that had entered their resources available for either connectivity or digital skills, digital literacy. And so we've been working in part of our coordination and alignment work, we've been working to encourage organizations, specifically places like libraries and school systems, to enter their resources into the 211 database so that people have easy access to find the opportunities available for those basic things, and then be able to move into the more advanced resources, such as Angie was describing. So, and when we talk about those covered populations, this is where kind of some of those key things come into play. These are those who are most impacted by structural racism, most impacted by historical oppression, and have not been in a situation to have the same opportunities as many of us have. And so, you know, having that quick access, that easy access to what comes next, what that first resource is, and then the path to the next resource is a really important factor here. When it comes to addressing digital equity and the digital divide, one of the things, as I mentioned, that we're working on is this alignment and collaboration. And Jaron mentioned the funding that's coming through from the federal government. So we've learned that the Digital Equity Act funds have been released. So those are coming to the state of Michigan. Michigan's BEAD plan has been approved by the federal government. And so we're anticipating that Michigan's Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity, as well as some of the other departments, like potentially Department of Education, and Department of Health and Human Services. We're anticipating that RFPs or funding opportunities will come through those main departments for not only the deployment of broadband, but also for these digital equity service areas. And so what we're doing right now is we're gathering information from local partners, those organizations like, my peers here on this call, other organizations who are involved in either literacy or workforce development service areas. We're gathering information from all of them about what they're currently providing, as well as what they're interested in providing in the future. And our hope is that we can do a little bit of matchmaking, encourage and foster some relationships and partnerships so that as soon as those RFPs or funding opportunities hit the ground, we are already in a position to have these project ideas formed, to have partnerships formed, and really have quality applications and proposals so that West Michigan can get as much funding as possible through this process. So we know that some of those funds are going to hit within the next, or some of the funding opportunities are going to hit within the next couple months, and then they'll be kind of staggered out through the rest of this calendar year. And we're really trying to make sure that organizations are talking with one another, that they're navigating kind of, who wants to take the lead and who wants to be in a support role, and how do we expand existing services that are really successful, and how do we try new things where we may be reaching different populations that we haven't reached before, or we may be going into a different line of service or a different niche area that hasn't been tried. All of those aspects are really important to supporting our residents and really achieving all of those employment and income outcomes that Jaron was talking about earlier. The other thing that we're involved in right now is supporting this broadband challenge phase. And I know that we're not talking a lot about deployment today, but this is a really important aspect because a lot of the coverage map that we see from the FCC indicates a level of coverage that is sufficient. And we know that sometimes that coverage isn't sufficient. And so we're working very closely with Kent County. Kent County administration has done a fantastic job in getting the word out about the broadband challenge. And we've been supporting that by, getting those surveys out, getting the links out to organizations and residents so that everyone has an opportunity. Even if they don't have internet at home, we want to make sure that they have access to connecting to the broadband challenge so that, and then support to complete those forms so that we have a really accurate picture for the FCC as the deployment of more infrastructure is released. I see I've got my warning, so I'm just going to say one more quick thing. When we talk about skills that employers are seeking, some of those entry-level jobs for deployment itself are really important. So we're talking about entry-level jobs for a wide range of sectors, but also entry-level jobs for broadband deployment. So things like CDLs and moving into some basic apprenticeships for the construction and deployment phase. But then also looking specifically at planning, project management platforms, and simulation platforms. Simulation is a really important aspect to problem solving and troubleshooting as we move forward with advanced technologies, no matter what sector a business is involved in. And so really being able to advance skills in simulation and that kind of critical thinking using digital skills is a really important aspect to employment advancement. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. To kind of put this thought out there too, just so you all know kind of the bigger picture and the way we look at how we are approaching that digital skills and digital equity and digital access. It's really targeting those people that might not be thought of being in your workforce talent pool. And so being able to target those people, there could very well be that diamond in the rough person out there that you just don't know exists. And we need to upskill them and reskill them with digital skills so that way they can apply for your companies and be a valuable member of your team. So thank you again, Wendy, for giving us a highlight of what you're doing. Next, we'll turn over to Teresa Vickers. She's the Vice President of Workforce Development at Goodwill of Greater Grand Rapids. I think we all know Goodwill in the front-facing sense, but they do a lot more behind the scenes and a lot for our workforce development as well. And so with that, I'd like to turn over to you, Teresa. Thank you.
Hi, yeah. Everybody knows about our stores pretty much, but Goodwill is basically what we do with the money that we get from our stores is job training, and we work with a lot of populations that have barriers to employment. We have 19 retail stores and 750 employees, and then we also serve about 1,500 people in our job training programs every year. We know that the digital divide is basically the division between those who have access to and can use the technology and those that don't. And it hits harder for people that have traditionally experienced inequities, such as people of different races, geographical locations, socioeconomic class, education level, and age. And people that have struggled are highly represented in Goodwill's job seeking programs, but also in our workforce. So we have kind of a dual approach about how we're approaching that digital divide within our organization. I'm going to cover a few things that we're doing as an organization and then kind of talk about where we're heading in the future. A few things that we're doing as an organization is one of the things that we have to address the people not having access to the devices is we have a tech loan program. We have purchased laptops and even hotspots, and we give those out. We let people borrow them for up to 3 months. They can sign them out, sometimes more if they're signed up for a class that's going a 4-month semester or whatever. They just need to kind of tell us what they're using it for, and then we sign it out and they can use it and they have that technology. We have been pretty aggressively signing people up for the Affordable Connectivity Program. As we all know, that supposedly is going away. We also work with the local internet providers like Comcast with the low cost options that they have for people who qualify for those. So we try to get as many people signed up for these things as we possibly can. One of the other things we have is an open computer lab. People can come in and use our technology for pretty much anything they want. So we've got that also. What we do for the participants in our program is that we've got digital literacy, basic digital literacy embedded into each of our programs. We teach people how to use the internet. We teach them how to set up an appropriate email account, how to use it, how to check it. We teach them about online storage because a lot of people are doing this on their phones. So we talk about the appropriate and safe use of social media. And because we're a job seeking sort of organization, a lot of our context area learning is around using Indeed and other job seeking sites. So we teach them how to use that. And while we're teaching them how to use that, they're also picking up those skills. And then for employees, I used to be a teacher, and one of the things that I studied was contextual learning, and that has stuck with me for a very long time. And basically it's how do you teach certain skills in subject areas or areas that have nothing to do with that skill. Like being a music teacher, which I was, we had to be able to teach reading as part of music. So how do we do that as part of a music class? So with our employees, what we've decided to do is we've made a very intentional decision to no longer print materials off that are available on our online systems and share them that way and have them fill them out, sometimes surveys on a piece of paper and then hand them in. What we decided is we're going to leave everything on the computer and they're going to have to access it that way. But what we've done is we've placed coaches in every one of our work locations, and the coaches are available to help anybody through anything that they have to do on the computer. So there's always a computer for use in those locations. And for instance, one of the things that we did was recently we redid our annual review process, and we added a self-evaluation to that. And we thought, well, we've got to have that on paper so people can fill it out. But basically what we did is we left it online, and we have the coaches sit down with them, and we put the employee in the driver's seat, but we sit our coaches sit and walk them through all the different parts that they have to complete. And our goal is to really help our employees gain skills while they're working and gain the familiarity. I have one example, kind of a story that happened. We had a person that was a cashier in our stores, and she, everybody recognized her as a great worker and wanted her to be a lead. And she was afraid to be a lead because at the end of the day, the lead has to put a few things into our system, and she was afraid of the computer skills. So we were able to get her training in some computer skills, and then she was able to move up to that lead position and make $2 more an hour just instantly as soon as she had. And it wasn't even that she couldn't have done them before. It was just she didn't have the confidence that she could use a computer. So, and if we have people, our job seekers especially, but even our employees, because we work with our employees to move them up and move them out if that's what they desire. If people want to go into skills that need, or jobs that need more technology skills, we really work with Grand Rapids Community College and really other training institutions and help them be successful at those places so they can learn those more advanced skills like computer programming and things like that. So that's kind of what we've been doing, but we recognize this as being a big area that we can be better at and make more improvements. We know that a lot of our people that work for us and that we serve fall into those groups that are more likely to be on the other side of the digital divide. So what we're doing right now is we're conducting currently right now a survey of our entire workforce and really seeing how much digital access they have and what their proficiency and confidence that they have. And we're going to use that. It should be coming back to us in about a month. We're going to use that to really design an entire program for our entire workforce and our participants to make sure that they have the equipment that they need, the connectivity they need, the skills and education that they need, because we really want to raise that level of everybody in our workforce. So that's us.
Thank you, Teresa, for your talking on the work of Goodwill of Greater Grand Rapids. We appreciate that and all the work that you're doing there. I'm going to filibuster as we're going to open up for questions in a minute. Think about your questions. What we would love to see is if you're hearing these panelists speak and you feel like they're doing great work, but there's something missing, now's your chance to be very interactive and sharing with the panel, sharing with everybody, kind of just a conversation about what more you're seeing when you're trying to fill your talent pool within your own companies or out in the community. What you're seeing is we're just missing the mark in West Michigan. So with that, if you have questions, raise your hands. You can comment in the chat. I do have just and as soon as another question comes in, I'll tell myself to be quiet and let you ask your questions. But I want to go back to Angie, and you talked about career coaches. Is there an opportunity for business leaders, community leaders to really help volunteer and help coach these individuals, or is this just purely something that you have staff that does this work?
Well, I think everyone can have the opportunity to help coach an individual, and it doesn't have to be specifically structured the way we're doing it with our job seekers. You know, some of our coaching is just basic career assistance, but some of it is very dedicated to helping individuals through a program that's either funded by the feds or the state and getting them on a specific career path. We are working on providing or creating actually a manual called Career Point, which we are working with some of our community partners right now on deploying. We've worked with Grand Rapids Community College and helped developing it. But this is a manual on helping an individual walk through their career pathway, right? So I think that's going to be a resource that'll be available to anybody, whether you're an individual or employer that may want to help your individuals or somebody you know in their career pathway. The other opportunities for an employer to help their individual employees is either through organizations like our Retention Solutions Network or the Source in Grand Rapids, which is a membership-based organization, but it provides a dedicated success coach for incumbent workers to overcome barriers, which may be in the space of digital literacy, right? So those are some other resources that can help employers specifically with their current workforce. But I echo Marcus's question here out for everybody. Interestingly enough, on Friday, we have a subcommittee of our workforce board tackling this particular issue, digital literacy, and what more we should be doing. How should we provide, we know we're not doing near enough. And part of the issue is helping an individual identify that they even have some barriers, right? No one's going to raise their hand and say, I want to go to a digital literacy workshop. I don't know how to use a computer. Sign me up. So, trying to be innovative on how we're providing better, more effective services to our job seekers as well as our employers. So any feedback you have, we will bring to that committee to help think about how we do our work better.
Thank you. As I don't see any hands being raised yet, I do have another question. This one for Teresa. You talk about the tech loan program. Is there any opportunities for people to donate, companies to donate tech equipment or whatever if they want to help contribute into the program that you offer?
We haven't done that before, but I guess there would be, for sure. So right now, yeah, that would be good. I know that I know the library, I believe the library also runs a program similar to that too. They might not anymore, but I think they do.
Not nudging anybody on the call to say that you should do it, but I think it's a great service, a great opportunity to help to get to that digital equity scope and to help our, like I said earlier, that diamond in the rough potential employee in the future. I'm gonna poke the bear because I don't see any. Oh, go ahead, Wendy.
Yeah, if I could just add to that regarding donation of tech, I think CompRenew is still involved in some of that kind of refurbishing of used tech as well as tech defenders. So those are additional options that would go through the process of wiping everything, to make sure there's no previous user information still remaining on those devices. And yeah, to reiterate what Teresa was saying, the libraries do a great job with loaning of devices and specifically hotspots. So they have some good programs that can kind of, expand capacity beyond the workforce development organization's capacity.
I will just make sure the lens is also as an employer, when you're upgrading your technology, those are great organizations that Wendy mentioned. I know we do. When we purchase new computers, we donate our old to those organizations for the refurbishing. So from an employer lens, if you're upgrading your equipment, it's a great place to donate back to the community.
Incredible information. I'm going to poke the bear. We have business leaders on this call. I want to hear from you on what you're seeing as you're hiring. You're trying to get more talent, more skilled workforce in your operations. We have organization leadership here on the call that is out there on the front lines, making sure that people are trained. I've heard from businesses that talk about when they hire a new individual and they have to spend a day or two training them how to use Outlook and things like that. And time is money. And so here's your opportunity to really bring those concerns forward. This is, again, just one of a handful of webinars that we're going to do. This is the first, but we definitely want to hear from you now. As Angie said, she has her workforce board meeting later this week. And so time is of the essence on getting that message out. I did get a question that just came in. As an HR director, I'm noticing a struggle with my applicants' lack of experience with digital skills during the interview process. I guess it's not really a question, it's a comment. But I guess that's what we're getting at. We want to make sure that we're forward facing for our members and business community in West Michigan on how you think that these organizations can best serve that upskilling and reskilling of that worker pool. So does anybody on our panelists have any comments to have while we potentially wait for any questions coming in?
Well, I will pose a question back to Katina. I think part of the issue for a service provider like us is what do you mean by digital skill? What skills are they lacking? Is it just basic understanding and that problem solving, like just basic maneuverability, or are there specific technologies that individuals are lacking? I think a struggle for us as a service provider is that's a big ocean, right? It's a big ocean to help an individual maneuver. And and it's continually changing. So figuring out how best to help a job seeker be prepared is something that we're always looking to better answer. Well, what is it they need? What would make them most effective?
Just even the front, my process, I have a 3-point process. The first part is a phone interview, just kind of getting the feel, because I feel that the applicants will be more comfortable in the privacy of their own home.
Okay.
Many of our organizations also use Zoom. Many of them cannot connect. They don't know how. You're struggling. And so it makes it very difficult, because for my organization, 99.99% of everything we do is digital. Because when they're checking, because we're in the healthcare. So when they're checking in clients' home, they have to utilize their phones to be able to check in. They need to know how to use the GPS system to navigate, to get to the client's home. So everything about that, but we are having a lot of struggle with that. We've hired, I've attempted to hire several individuals who went through the Goodwill program, but many of the applicants, when they came, their presentation, when you're going into someone's home, they're not prepared. Because they don't understand that although that all of their documentations, everything is digital stamp, they don't know how to type, because everybody now uses text messaging. So when they're communicating and doing documentations that could be used now in court, they're writing like they're texting. So they don't even understand the importance of how to type documentations and not text it. And so
that's a great comment, Katina, because we were actually having that conversation with our youth program staff. Is, you know, we have all these youth who are using a lot of technology in school, right? Everything's on Chromebook, even on their phone, but it's a different type of digital literacy, right? Like being professional and not typing in shorthand with, you know, I have a 17-year-old and a 19-year-old, like I know what you're talking about. So that's a different level of skills that we need to teach versus just knowing how to turn the computer on. Great. Thank you, Katina.
Kristen, I see your hand is up.
Well said, Katina. That was one of my points there, is that transfer of skill between the phone to the actual computer. And I think one of the things that we find, we try to keep our application process as simple as possible and remove any barriers. But when we get to the onboarding, people are very hesitant to complete anything at home. And it's because a lot of that is done either on a computer at a library or somewhere else. And I think it's that data entry of knowing how to maneuver, even just tabbing over and clicking over, and finding ways that we can help in those areas where we try to eliminate the barrier. Saying, okay, well, you can come in and we'll walk you through that process here on site, but not printing it out for them, because we still want them to learn some of that skill, because then it'll translate to our data entry either in inventory or warehouse or on our production lines, as we're trying to get that accuracy and everything else there too. And I will say that from the employer part, I think that there's the onboarding, but then there's also the retention. So I will say definitely skills that we need to grow in our workforce as far as Outlook and Excel and CAD and other things like that. But also when you get to understanding their benefits and knowing, because all of those platforms are now electronic. So they have to be able to understand how to access those and how we can help them. And so I would say, again, understanding different platforms and not being afraid to click in those and to enter their information and to use them, because we want them to understand their benefits, because we want them to stay with us. And if they don't know, we're seeing people are leaving, so like, oh, well, I'm getting better benefits here. And then we do an exit survey. It's really, they aren't. They just didn't have the tools or the skill to access what they have.
Wendy, I'm not sure if your hand's raised to answer that question or if it's a separate question, but I want to turn it over to you.
Yeah, I guess it kind of goes along with what folks were saying. I think one of the things that we're seeing as well is kind of that transferability. And I think what's really important here is ties back to what Teresa was saying about kind of working with incumbent workers and being able to coach along the way as people are on the job and are learning different aspects of the job. And I think this is really important in K-12 education and in higher ed as well, because we're hearing from students, we've had some focus groups with the Student Leadership Council at the Kent ISD. And one of the things that they said was that their teachers don't have the comfort level to help them, to guide them. And I hate putting more on the education system. I know that they're overstrained and understaffed already, and that's such a big burden. But I think it's something that we want to just gradually encourage and nudge, is that in every single type of workplace, we all need to take some responsibility, not only to advance our own skills as technology changes, but to support our coworkers, to support our peers, and to provide opportunities for our employees to continue to learn and advance and try different things. Sometimes it's just a matter of like that concept of playing and learning at the same time. Sometimes that's necessary with technology as well. So how do we transfer, again, some of those skills, like Angie was saying, some of the, going from texting to documentation, or, TikTok to, someone said, moving from TikTok to Excel, tapping into the understandings that folks have already, and then being able to transfer them over into the workplace skills is really important. But for those people who are in leadership positions, to really take on those new technologies, not be scared of them. It can be scary, and change is hard for all of us. But being able to say, this is what's best for those that I'm working with, for my coworkers or for my students or for my employees, and kind of helping and coaching along the way is such an important piece of that. And I think what we're seeing often is that it's that fear that's holding back some, and it's the kind of drive or competitiveness that's really accelerating others. And so that's kind of creating more of this divide, is when we have those kind of innate personality traits that are coming out in how people are adopting different technologies.
Thank you, Wendy. I want to be respectful of your time, and so I do want to wrap it up. I just want to say, I appreciate you all and the questions that you have and the comments that you're giving. If you have any more questions out there, feel free to email me. I'll put my email in the chat in just a minute, and I'll push it off to our panelists as well, and then we can get more answers. The work is not done yet. The conversation is not stopping. As I said, this is just the first of a handful of webinar series we're going to do. There was a comment in the chat from Ariana. Actually, let me see. Actually, it was Maria that talked about the agriculture. So one thing I want to get from your input as well is, as we talk about these other webinars, we want to be more specific on specific industries, whether it's agriculture or manufacturing or anything, new Americans and underserved populations, things like that. So feel free to utilize the email that I will share in the chat to share kind of your input on what you want to help shape the next webinars to look like. As well as the government affairs side of the Grand Rapids Chamber, we do have the option for you to sign up for government affairs breaking alert texting. So I put that in the chat as well, that to really, if you want to know what's happening in the West Michigan area in government affairs world, text government to that number right there, 616-280-4617. We don't over abuse it. We've actually only used it once since we've rolled it out in November. So you won't get bombarded from us, but feel free to text that and sign up for those updates. We do have our Grand Rapids Chamber Policy Conference on April 16th, next Tuesday. Final call to register to attend. We hope that you're able to attend and join us to learn what some of the things we're working on locally and statewide for our West Michigan community. And I just want to give a special another final thanks to everybody involved, to Comcast for being our sponsor, National Skills Coalition, Goodwill Industries, I'm going to read it on the list, Kent County Essential Needs Task Force, and obviously West Michigan Works for helping push the message out to your side as well. We appreciate all of you, and all of you for being on the call as well, for taking that time to learn and to talk about digital skills. The world is changing. Digital skills are more prevalent than ever, and we need to continue to fight and grow and develop our talented skills in the workforce. So with that, thank you all and have a great rest of your Wednesday. Thank you.